Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a massive cybersecurity event that's currently rocking one of the absolute largest travel corporations on the planet, Carnival Corporation. Listen, if you or anyone you know has ever taken a cruise, you're going to want to pay very close attention to what we're breaking down today. We are talking about highly sensitive data allegedly being stolen. And I mean everything, from your credit cards right down to your actual passport numbers. We'll be unpacking the intense demands for lifetime credit monitoring and taking a hard look at the lawsuits claiming severe corporate negligence. So let's jump right into exactly what went down, what the lifelong risks actually are, and what this whole mess means for everyday cruisers who, just wanted to go on vacation.
Here's a quick look at our agenda. 1. The massive Carnival breach. 2. Your lifelong identity risk. 3. Lawsuits claim gross negligence. 4. Carnival's official defense. And finally, 5. The financial impact and precedent.
Okay, let's kick things off with Section 1, the massive Carnival breach.
8.7 million. Just let that staggeringly huge number sink in for a second. That is the amount of records allegedly stolen by a prolific cybercriminal group known as ShinyHunters. Now, to give you some context on just how severe this is, ShinyHunters is absolutely infamous for data theft, extortion, and just dumping stolen information onto the dark web. They are not amateurs, okay? They're a highly active, known threat group. And in this specific instance, they've allegedly pulled off a monumental data heist targeting both guest information and internal corporate data. We aren't talking about some small, localized IT glitch here. We're looking at a volume of compromised records roughly equivalent to the population of a small country just sitting in the hands of extortionists.
Now, when we hear Carnival, a lot of us just picture the specific Carnival Cruise Line brand with the funnel ships, right? But Carnival Corporation is actually this massive global umbrella. So if you've ever sailed with Princess Cruises, Holland America Lines, Seabourn, Cunard, Costa Cruises, or even AIDA Cruises, your sensitive personal data might actually be caught up in this net. The breach allegedly touches records across their entire global portfolio. That means millions of people who booked, say, a luxury voyage on Seabourn are facing the exact same cybersecurity nightmare as someone who booked a quick weekend getaway on a standard Carnival ship.
Look at the sheer speed of this timeline. It built an incredibly tense narrative, like a ticking clock. The lawsuit suggests the initial breach happened right around April 18, 2026. Then, just 72 hours later on April 21st, you hit the deadline ShinyHunters allegedly gave Carnival to meet their extortion demands, which, by the way, Carnival did not do. And literally the very next day, starting on April 22nd and running through the 24th, 3 separate class action lawsuits were already filed against the corporation. The crazy acceleration from a quiet digital intrusion to a full-blown legal war in less than a week, that's truly unprecedented in the travel industry.
Moving right along to Section 2, your lifelong identity risk.
Guys, we aren't just talking about a leaked email address or a mildly annoying spam phone list. We are looking at passports, credit card numbers, exact birthdays, passwords, phone numbers, and loyalty club data. This is a severe vulnerability checklist. I mean, with this specific combination of highly sensitive data, malicious actors essentially have a master key to a person's entire digital life. Identity thieves don't just want your credit card to make a quick purchase anymore. They want your passport number and your exact date of birth so they can entirely assume your identity, open fraudulent accounts in your name, and totally bypass traditional security checks.
And that specific toxic combination of stolen data leads directly to the core argument of the plaintiffs in these lawsuits. Think about it. You can cancel a stolen credit card with a quick phone call, right? But you literally cannot cancel your birthday. Replacing a passport is a massive, stressful headache, and your fundamental identity details? Those are permanent. Because of the permanence of this information, the former passengers leading the charge argue this danger will never truly go away. They're claiming an increased lifelong risk of fraud. This isn't just a temporary hiccup. They argue it's a permanent shadow over their personal security that they are going to have to monitor forever.
Which brings us to Section 3, lawsuits claim gross negligence.
The legal teams representing these former passengers are throwing around a very specific and very heavy legal term, gross negligence. This means they aren't just saying, oh, Carnival made a simple IT mistake or had an unlucky accident. They are alleging a severe lack of due diligence. Their central argument is basically this. Given the massive, well-documented spike in cyber attacks specifically targeting the travel and financial industries lately, Carnival absolutely should have foreseen this threat and implemented adequate data security protocols to protect its guests. But allegedly, they failed to do so on a fundamental level.
And the specific technical allegations here are pretty damning.
The plaintiffs claim that their sensitive personal information was left completely unencrypted. That makes it perfectly readable to the hackers the very second they got in. Furthermore, the plaintiffs allege that basic modern security measures like two-factor authentication, or 2FA, were completely missing. I mean, 2FA is that standard text message code or app prompt that practically every bank and email provider requires today. The plaintiffs are essentially arguing that by not using these incredibly standard, basic tools, a multi-billion-dollar corporation left the proverbial front door wide open for cybercriminals.
Now, let's flip the script and look at Section 4, Carnival's Official Defense.
Carnival's official statement actually provides a completely different perspective on the timeline and scope of the initial intrusion. Here's what they said. After detecting unauthorized online activity involving a single user account, we acted quickly to shut it down and block any further unauthorized access. They also noted that they immediately notified law enforcement. So Carnival's official stance emphasizes that their response was immediate, it was effective, and they successfully isolated the threat to just one single compromised user account rather than some sort of systemic failure of their entire security apparatus.
So what we're left with is a massive he said, she said legal battle. On one side, you've got the plaintiffs claiming a catastrophic failure of basic security, alleging absolutely no encryption and no two-factor authentication. On the other side, Carnival is firmly asserting they acted swiftly to shut down access, they're working deliberately with trusted global security experts to handle the fallout, and they're explicitly warning that anonymous reports circulating online aren't always accurate. It's a stark, frankly fascinating contrast between legal claims of gross negligence and corporate assertions of expert-led containment.
Finally, let's dive into Section 5, Financial Impact and Precedent.
Look, these lawsuits aren't just asking for a one-time apology check. Sure, they want financial compensation for the victims, but because of that lifelong identity risk we talked about earlier, they are demanding free credit monitoring services for life, for all class members. Providing lifelong credit monitoring for millions of people is a massive ongoing operational expense. And finally, they're seeking a court-ordered overhaul to ensure that any data remaining in Carnival's possession is forcibly and properly protected from now on, fundamentally changing how the company operates internally.
To really understand the potential financial fallout here, we have to look at Carnival's own history. Back in 2022, they were forced to pay out $1.25 million to settle a previous data breach that occurred in August of 2020. They were actually ordered by attorneys general from over 40 states to shell out that money and significantly strengthen their internal cybersecurity practices.
And the math on this is just staggering. That 2020 breach impacted roughly 180,000 guests and employees, resulting in that $1.25 million payout. But this 2026 breach, it allegedly impacts 8.7 million records. That is nearly 50 times the amount of compromised data compared to the previous settlement. If the courts apply similar math to this case, or actually rule in favor of lifetime credit monitoring for all those victims, the financial and reputational risk wrapped up in this new global breach is absolutely astronomical for the company's future.
As this legal saga continues to unfold, and as millions of travelers basically wait to hear if their passports and credit cards are up for sale on the dark web, it leaves us with a critical question to consider before we hand over our data for our next vacation. If basic tools like two-factor authentication are allegedly missing at the absolute highest levels of corporate hospitality, what steps are these travel giants actually taking to protect your lifelong identity? It's definitely something every single consumer needs to be thinking about. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and seriously, stay vigilant out there.